voltage level. But with PAM16, that would easily be enough to skew the voltage level into a neighboring territory and then represent a different 4-bit sequence. So as you increase the PAM modulation, you increase the sensitivity. The way this is handled in HDBaseT is it uses the lower grade PAM modulation for important data. So for PAM2, it's the training symbols, which are used to define all these variables that control the link quality. So you absolutely want to make sure these are transmitted correctly. Then with PAM4, we have the header and the CRC. PAM8, we have the audio and the Ethernet. If you lose audio, you'll definitely notice it. It's one of those things where audio is much more noticeable if it drops out, for example, and it also is not using as much bandwidth, so it can go with the PAM8 without too many problems. PAM modulation, we're using the active pixels. So if some pixels don't get transmitted correctly and you miss them, because they're being refreshed so many times a second, you need to lose a lot of pixels before you actually start to see a problem. So you can kind of think about the different PAM modulations in this way. So if we look at an analogy with cars on a road, with TMDS, we have our cars going along, each one carrying one person at a high speed. So you can think of this as our PAM2, where each represents 1 bit. With HDBaseT, we can lower speed, which is a lower clock speed, but for every vehicle, we're carrying more people, so more bits, effectively. We have some installation recommendations for HDBaseT. The first is to try and always use high quality cables. Whilst HDBaseT does compensate for a lot of problems, it's always best to use cables that are designed for the high data rate being used. If possible, try and go in as straighter path as possible. Coiling up extra lengths of cable can have a bad effect. It's best to avoid sources of electromagnetic noise in the environment. As an example, we have some cases where cables run next to high voltage for air conditioners or different things like that. You could have, when the air conditioner comes on, the cable drops out. 10 gigabit Ethernet standard is rated for use with 2 patch panels. So with HDBaseT, we can follow this, but it's best to avoid anything extra than that, or any patches in general if possible. And when laying cables and building racks and patch panels, it's best to limit the number of cables in a bundle, particularly if you want to reach the max distance. We say that for Cat6a or Cat7, have 6 in a bundle, but if you're using Cat5e, only have 1. And then when you have a bundle, there should be a distance of 10 to 15 centimeters between the bundles. So there's a newer version of HDBaseT being worked on. This slide's a little bit out of date because we're looking at HDBaseT 3.0 at the moment. So 2.0 would be backwards compatible with 5-play, a new feature set called home play, also supporting the audio return channel and USB 2.0. The upstream link bandwidth was increased, so that's from going up to 300 megabits. The downstream link bandwidth is unchanged, and then the idea would be to have multi-streaming support with HDBaseT hubs and daisy-chainable devices, which basically means adding an addressing system. I think where we are with HDBaseT 3.0 is that they're looking at uncompressed HDMI 2.0 point-to-point over CADX cables, which is doing some pretty crazy stuff to get the bandwidths required for that. So to summarize, HDBaseT is designed to complement HDMI, not to replace it. We have the 5-play with the different features. It's using a proprietary coding scheme with PAM16, similar to 10 gigabit Ethernet, but doesn't use IP, and it's less sensitive to cadex cable problems, which was kind of the whole reason it came about in the first place. So there's lots of HDBaseT products out there, and if you compare the features between them, you can normally tell does it transmit something over a cat cable up to 100 meters? Is it uncompressed? Does it support these resolutions? There's a lot of similar looking products out there. With Lightwear, we call our HDBaseT products TPS, and on top of the standard feature set, we try to enhance HDBaseT. So we use a 15 kilovolt ESD protection, which is very high, probably higher than you'd see on any other product. We've got the steel enclosure for EMI protection. The two different modes that I mentioned before, HDBaseT and long reach. We give you access to the cable diagnostics information, which is really helpful. And then some of the features that you see on most Lightwear products, EDID management, signal conversion between VGA or DisplayPort into HDBaseT, and the audio embedding and de-embedding, and the event manager, which is our sort of limited control feature. So here are some examples of TPS products, but we've got quite a wide range. So before we go on to fiber optics transmission, are there any questions that we can answer?
Yes, so we had one question. I think you covered it briefly, but what is the highest resolution and frequency supported by HDBaseT?
So in the slides, we've kind of been talking about HDBaseT 1.0. HDBaseT 2.0, I believe there are some products out there that can do UHD at 60 Hertz 444, so HDMI 2.0. But they are using a compression technology. I think it's most commonly DSC, digital stream compression. And so that's why the big news with HDBaseT 3.0 is that it's going to be uncompressed. So when HDBaseT 3.0 comes out, you should see uncompressed UHD 60 Hertz 444 over cadex cables. Having said that, the majority of HDBaseT products out there are the 1.0 or 1.x series, which are, as I mentioned earlier, linked to HDMI 1.4 in terms of bandwidth and capabilities.
Thanks. Okay, go on one more. Do you think there will be a switcher matrix for HDBaseT 2.0? And are there HDBaseT to fiber products?
I don't know of any switcher. I think the fact that I'm not a huge expert on the matter, but I know the HDBaseT 3.0 chips that I've heard about are point-to-point. So I think if they were going to make an HDBaseT switcher, you need a technology that isn't just point-to-point. I mean, you can use a matrix switcher, one of our modular frames, to take in HDBaseT and switch it and put it out again. But it's not the same as something like SDVoE, where it's actually sitting on the network standard and has IP addresses and can be sent over a sort of standard off-the-shelf Ethernet network switch. So yeah, I'm not too sure if there are plans to release that kind of HDBaseT switcher.
But we have our MX2 modular frame that's coming out soon.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting one. What Cat-X extension technology we use for that product will be interesting. Sorry, Phil, I forgot the second part of the question.
Let's see where it's gone.